That violent arrest changed him forever. The 62-year-old was on his way home from Oregon after meeting his newly born granddaughter. He pulled into the parking lot of Terrace View Park to rest during his 12-hour road trip, a decision that led to a violent arrest where he thought he was going to die. Hinton has filed a federal lawsuit saying there are systemic failures in the sheriff's office and the county when it comes to keeping citizens safe. The lawsuit also claims that Sergeant Hinton was actually involved in a previous excessive force complaint 3 months prior to this incident, a case where Judge George Fearing wrote this about Sergeant Hinton, suggesting, quote, he works as a law enforcement officer not to serve others and benefit the Spokane community, but to intimidate and dominate.
So I personally want to take a second and apologize to Mr. Hinton because he actually emailed me concerning this case like the end of last year. I think it was December. And I received so many emails that sometimes they get lost, and I did not see this email. And when I did, I watched it, I read the email, and then I looked up the case, and I saw that there was an update to this particular situation, and a federal lawsuit has been filed. But for those of you guys who have not seen this video or don't fully know what's going on with it, let's play this news clip and come back and let's discuss a bit.
And we're about to show you body camera footage from that night. We do want to warn you that it is graphic. Kevin Hinton was arrested because he was in a Spokane Valley park after dark. Hinton told Spokane Deputy Clay Hilton that he'd move his car and find another place to go, but Sergeant Hilton wouldn't let him go until he showed his ID.
So I read it all the time down below in the comment section that identification is like a drug to police officers. And it is, but the question is why? Why would they go to such extreme lengths to get your identification? And for those of you who may not know, I'm sure most of you guys do, but for the sake of those who don't, the NCIC is the reason they do this. I want to read something really quickly. The NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center, is a computerized index of missing persons and criminal justice information and is designed for the rapid exchange of information between criminal justice agencies. Users access the NCIC computer located at the FBI headquarters through regional or state computer systems or with direct tie-ins to the NCIC computer. So what it all really stems towards is the fact that you're supposed to be entered into a system so you can always be tracked. Every traffic stop, every encounter, which lawfully is not every encounter, but in the minds of police officers, every encounter has to end with them getting your ID, whether you're breaking the law or not. Now, the law states you have to be suspected of committing a crime. We understand that, but that's not how police officers are trained. I don't think most police know the bigger plan here. They're just trained this way in the academy. Get the ID, enter them into the database. That way we can track everyone.
Hinton refused and the situation escalated, and Hinton was pulled out of the car and struck several times by the sergeant. Hinton suffered several injuries, including several broken ribs, a concussion, and a punctured lung. More than a year later, Hinton is fighting for justice.
He shared his experience from that night with us for the first time in a one-on-one interview with Jordan Smith, who joins us in studio tonight with new details on this story, Jordan.
Yeah, Kevin Hinton, that violent arrest changed him forever. The 62-year-old was on his way home from Oregon after meeting his newly born granddaughter. He pulled into the parking lot of Terrace View Park to rest during his 12-hour road trip, a decision that led to a violent arrest where he thought he was going to die. How often do you think back to that night?
Every day. Every breath I take, kind of. I mean, and every time I lick my lips, I mean, it's just not going away.
Hinton says systemic failures led to his civil rights being violated that night.
You're under arrest. Get on the ground!
While in handcuffs, Hinton was evaluated by medics. They cleared him to be taken to the Spokane County Jail, not the hospital.
It was excruciatingly painful to get in and out of that police car. I literally thought I was dying. I mean, that was my thought at that point.
The jail refused to admit him, sending him straight to the emergency room.
It sounds as if the jail was the only responsible entity in this situation. I mean, outside of Mr. Hinton, because the paramedics, they came and they assessed this guy on the scene and they cleared him to go to jail. Now, let me say this about paramedics, seeing as though I was a paramedic, and when I worked in law enforcement, I also worked alongside paramedics. A lot of those guys are just friends and they're buddies, okay? Officers are friends with paramedics, paramedics are friends with officers, and that's the way it goes. So when medics show up to the scene and they take this quick assessment, when they get there, the reason it's so quick and careless is because the police officer tells the medic, hey, yeah, we got a guy, he was refusing, and it's a good conversation. Yeah, he's fine, take him in. And that's the way it goes. But once he got to the jail, you know, luckily someone there was like, hey, no, something's wrong with this guy. He needs to go to the hospital. So not only does the police department need to be held accountable, I would say those medics on that scene also need to be held accountable in this situation.
That's where Hinton learned several ribs had actually been separated from his sternum. His recovery process was agonizing.
Getting up to go to the bathroom was a challenge.
Spokane police investigated the incident and recommended second-degree assault charges against Sergeant Hilton. It was then sent to the Yakima County prosecutor for review, and 6 months later, no charges had been recommended from their office.
If that would have been you or I would have been in jail that night and still in jail. You know, he should have been relieved of duty immediately and dealt with accordingly.
Hinton has filed a federal lawsuit saying there are systemic failures in the sheriff's office and the county when it comes to keeping citizens safe. The lawsuit also claims that Sergeant Hinton was actually involved in a previous excessive force complaint 3 months prior to this incident, a case where Judge George Fearing wrote this about Sergeant Hilton, suggesting, quote, he works as a law enforcement officer not to serve others and benefit the Spokane community, but to intimidate and dominate.
It's time for some justice in this.
And the Spokane County Sheriff's Office did not return our request for comment on this. Meanwhile, the Yakima County prosecutor told us they'd provide an update on where they're at this process in terms of getting charges out by lunchtime. We reached out again and never heard back. So a lot of moving pieces in this lawsuit.
So as we see, Sergeant Hilton of the Spokane Valley Police Department is no stranger when it comes down to this type of behavior. Even a judge agreed that this guy is out to dominate citizens. And so if he's out to dominate and he's no stranger to this, then it's obvious, it's blatant, it's common sense that the Spokane Valley Police Department knows what type of sergeant they have on their staff, but yet and still, they're letting him roam free to terrorize citizens. But to be more detailed, this sergeant works for the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, who also contracts with the Spokane Valley Police Department. So as a deputy, he can work as a police officer, which is why the lawsuit actually holds both departments accountable. And not only both departments, but American Medical Response, the ambulance service who cleared Mr. Hinton to go to jail when he actually had broken ribs, concussions, and let me see, what did I miss? Punctured lungs. So there were several things wrong with Mr. Hinton, and they cleared him to go to jail when they should have told the police to take him to the hospital. This is, again, and I always say this, record, record, record. Without this video evidence from the body cam, who knows how far this case would have or would not have went. Make sure you record the police. Always know your rights. With that being said, We the People University, signing off. If you're one of the viewers who reached out saying that you're not getting any of the We the People University notifications, I have a solution. By texting WTPU to 844-764-2158, I can personally notify you whenever we publish videos. Text WTPU to 844-764-2158 and you will receive a text message notification with the link every time we publish a video.